I never thought my own mother would destroy something I worked so hard for. I couldn't believe my own mother would sabotage my future. Not for a stranger, but for my sister. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily Parker. I'm 28, and for the first time in years, I felt like my life was finally going in the right direction. After working countless late nights, sacrificing weekends, and pushing myself through failures, I got an email from a top marketing firm in Chicago. It was an offer letter, my dream job. I remember crying tears of relief that day. It felt like everything I had been waiting for was finally happening. I called my mom right away to tell her the news. At first, she sounded happy, maybe even proud. But her voice changed when I mentioned the company's name. She said something like, "That's the one Chloe applied for too, right?" I didn't think much of it. My sister and I had similar degrees, but Chloe was younger and still finding her way. I thought my mom would be happy at least one of us made it in. I was wrong. A few days later, the company asked me to come in to finalize some paperwork. I got dressed early that morning, full of excitement and nerves. I wanted to make a good impression. When I arrived at the office, the receptionist smiled and said, "Oh, you must be here for Chloe." I froze. Maybe she just got confused. I said, "No, I'm Emily Parker. I'm here to meet with the HR manager." The receptionist's smile faded. She looked through some files and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, but the position's already been filled." My heart dropped. I asked who got it. She hesitated before saying, "Chloe Parker, my little sister." I stood there, unable to move. My sister had my job. The one I had worked for, dreamed of, waited for. I left the building and called her immediately. She didn't answer. Then I called my mom. She picked up after a few rings and sounded completely calm. I asked her what happened. She sighed and said, "Emily, sweetie, Chloe needed this more than you. You'll find something else. You always do." I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. I couldn't even find the words to respond. She spoke like it was a small favor, like she didn't just ruin years of my effort. I sat in my car and cried until my throat hurt. I couldn't understand how a mother could do that to her child. That night, Chloe finally called. She said, "Mom told them you couldn't take the job because you had another offer." She sounded guilty, but she didn't offer to fix it. She just said, "It's business, Em." That was the moment something in me broke. Not just from losing the job, but from realizing that my own family didn't see my success as something to celebrate. They saw it as something to take. And I went to my parents' house that evening because I couldn't stay quiet anymore. My chest felt tight the whole drive there. I didn't want to believe that my mom had actually done what the company said. I wanted her to tell me it was a misunderstanding, that somehow things got mixed up. But deep down, I already knew the truth. When I walked in, Chloe was sitting in the living room with our mom. They were talking and laughing like nothing had happened. For a moment, they both looked surprised to see me, but my mom quickly smiled, pretending everything was normal. I didn't even sit down. I just looked at her and said, "Why did you do that, Mom? Why would you call them and tell them to give my job to Chloe?" Her face changed instantly. The smile disappeared, replaced with that strict, cold look she always used when she didn't want to be questioned. "Emily," she said, "you don't understand. Chloe needed this more than you. You'll find something else. You always do." Her words cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how easily she said it, like it didn't matter that she'd crushed me. Like my hard work meant nothing. I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, but she didn't. She just sat there, calm and proud of what she'd done. I turned to my dad, hoping he'd say something, anything. He looked at me for a second, then dropped his eyes to the floor. He didn't say a word. That silence hurt almost as much as what my mother said. He had always stayed out of things, always quiet when my mom made decisions. But this time I needed him to stand up for me. He didn't. Then I looked at Chloe. I thought maybe she'd show some guilt or at least apologize, but she didn't. She gave a small, awkward smile and said softly, "Sorry, Em. It's business." Those two words made my stomach turn. She said it like we weren't sisters, like I was just another person she'd stepped over. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mother had chosen my sister, my father stayed silent, and Chloe acted like it was normal. I felt completely alone in that room. My hands were shaking, and I could feel tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them see me cry. I took a deep breath and said, "You didn't just take a job from me. You took my trust. You made me believe family meant something. My mom didn't even look guilty. She just said, "You're being dramatic. You'll thank me one day." That was the moment I realized she'd never see what she'd done as wrong. She believed she was helping Chloe, even if it meant destroying me. I walked out of that house without saying another word. I could hear Chloe calling after me, but I didn't turn around. As I drove away, I told myself I was done waiting for my family to value me. The people I trusted the most had betrayed me, and I knew then that something in me had changed forever. That betrayal was just the beginning of what was coming next. The days after that confrontation were the hardest I had ever lived through. Everything felt heavy. I woke up each morning hoping it was a bad dream, but reality hit me again and again. My job was gone, and my family didn't care. I had already quit my old position because I believed I was starting the new one. My rent was due in 2 weeks, and my savings were running out fast. I spent hours staring at my laptop, trying to find another job, but nothing came close to what I had lost. Every rejection email felt like another reminder of what my mother had taken away from me. My fridge was half empty, and the bills kept piling up. I could feel the pressure in my chest every time I checked my bank account. One night, my landlord slipped a note under my door. It was a notice reminding me that my rent was overdue. I sat on the floor, holding that paper in my hands, feeling completely defeated. I didn't have the energy to argue or explain. I packed a few bags and called my friend Jenna. She didn't even hesitate. She told me to come stay with her. Jenna had always been there for me. When I arrived at her apartment, she gave me a hug and said, "You're going to be okay, Em. This isn't the end." I wanted to believe her, but my heart still felt broken. I didn't just lose a job. I lost the trust one had in my own family. At night, when Jenna was asleep, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't stop thinking about Chloe. I could picture her walking into that office every morning, sitting at the desk that was supposed to be mine. I imagined her drinking coffee with the team I was meant to work with, celebrating achievements that should have been mine. It made my chest ache. I kept replaying everything my mother said. "You'll find something else. You always do." Maybe she thought I was strong enough to recover, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like she didn't care if I broke apart. I tried to convince myself not to be angry, but the betrayal ran too deep. Jenna tried to distract me. She made me go on walks with her, cooked with me, and even helped me fix my resume. She said, "You're too good to stay down for long." I smiled and thanked her, but inside I was scared. I didn't know how to start again when everything I had worked for was gone. Every night, I told myself I'd move on. But every morning, when I opened my phone and saw pictures of Chloe and my mom together, smiling, happy, proud, I felt the pain all over again. They had everything I wanted, and I had nothing but questions. Still, deep inside, something small and quiet kept me going, a voice that whispered, "This isn't where your story ends." I didn't know it yet, but the weeks went by, and I was still living with Jenna, trying to piece my life back together. Every morning I scrolled through job postings, sending out applications to places I didn't even care about anymore. I just needed something to survive. One afternoon, I got a call from a small consulting agency downtown. They needed a temporary assistant to help with marketing campaigns for a few clients. The pay wasn't great, but I said yes without thinking twice. Anything was better than sitting around feeling useless. The first few days at the agency were quiet. It wasn't one of those big, fancy offices with glass walls and expensive furniture. It was simple, old desks, worn-out chairs, and a team that looked tired but determined. I didn't mind. For the first time since everything happened, I felt like I had a reason to get up in the morning. That's where I met Ryan Mitchell. He was a regional manager who visited the office twice a week to check on projects. He wasn't the type to talk much at first, but he noticed how focused I was. One day, he stopped by my desk and asked, "You've got a sharp eye for detail. Where did you work before this?" I told him about my background in marketing and how I was between jobs. I didn't mention the betrayal. He nodded like he understood more than I said. Over time, Ryan started giving me more tasks, small projects that let me show what I could do. He'd call me into his office and explain things about market analysis, client strategy, and presentation building. He said, "You're good, Emily. You just need to refine how you show it." His confidence in me slowly started to rebuild what my family had broken. I began staying late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to learn. Ryan noticed that too. He'd share tips from his own experience, teaching me tricks that only people who'd been in the field for years knew. For the first time in months, I felt capable again. My ideas mattered. My effort meant something. Meanwhile, my mother kept sending family group messages about Chloe's new job. Every week there was a new success story. A photo of Chloe at some company event, or my mom bragging about how proud she was. I stopped responding. The old me would have cried over it, but now I just felt distant. Their world no longer felt like mine. I poured everything into my new role. Each project I worked on added a new piece to my portfolio. I wanted to be ready for something bigger, something that would make all the pain worth it. I didn't talk about revenge or proving anyone wrong, but deep down, that fire was still there. Ryan once told me, "The best comeback is quiet. Let your success speak before you do." That line stayed with me. I didn't realize it yet, but my quiet comeback had already begun. Fallout was only the beginning of my comeback. 6 months passed, and life slowly began to change for me. I had settled into the consulting agency and learned more than I ever expected. Ryan had become both a mentor and a friend. He pushed me to take risks, improve my ideas, and believe in myself again. One morning, he called me into his office and said, "Emily, I recommended you for a position at another firm. They're looking for a lead strategist, and I think you're ready." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. A lead strategist? That was far above where I thought I could be after everything that had happened. I asked, "Are you sure I can handle that?" Ryan smiled and said, "You've already been doing that work here. You just don't have the title yet. It's time you get what you deserve." When I saw the name of the company, my heart skipped a beat. It was a large marketing firm, one of the top in Chicago, and a direct competitor of the company that had hired Chloe. It felt like fate was giving me another chance, and this time, I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. I spent the next few days preparing for the interview. Jenna helped me pick out a professional outfit, and Ryan helped me practice my answers. When the day came, I walked into that building with my head held high. The interview panel asked tough questions, but I stayed calm and confident. Every time they asked about problem solving, I thought about all the challenges I had faced over the last year. I used my pain as strength. A week later, I got the call. I had the job. I remember sitting on my bed in silence after hanging up, letting the news sink in. For the first time in a long while, I felt proud of myself again. I hadn't needed my mother's help or anyone's approval. I had done this on my own. The new firm was bigger, busier, and full of competition. But I was ready. I threw myself into the work, determined to prove my worth. Within months, I helped the company land several big clients. Coincidentally, some of those clients had left Chloe's company to join ours. I didn't plan it that way, but when I found out, I couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of justice. I heard through mutual contacts that Chloe's firm was struggling to keep their clients satisfied. My name started showing up in industry reports, and people were beginning to notice my work. I knew my sister must have heard about it too. But even with all that success, I still didn't feel completely at peace. Winning in business was one thing, but deep down, I wanted my family to see what they had done to me. I wanted them to understand the pain they caused, and how their betrayal had shaped the person I had become. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. I was no longer the broken daughter they left. It had been almost a year since I last sat down for a family dinner. When my mother called to invite me, I wasn't sure if I should go. Part of me wanted to refuse, but another part of me wanted to see them again, to see how they would act now that my life was finally back on track. After thinking for a while, I agreed. I decided I would go, not to prove anything, but to show them that I was no longer the same broken person they left behind. When I arrived, everything looked the same as always. The table was filled with food, and my mother was moving around, greeting everyone with her usual loud, cheerful tone. Chloe was already there, dressed perfectly, smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. My father sat quietly at the end of the table, avoiding eye contact as he usually did. As we ate, my mother couldn't stop talking about Chloe's achievements. "You should have seen her last presentation," she said proudly. Her boss said she's one of the brightest employees they've ever had. Everyone nodded and smiled politely. I stayed quiet, focusing on my food. I didn't feel angry, not anymore. I just listened, like someone watching a movie they've already seen before. After a while, my mother turned to me and said, "Emily, I hope you're not still mad about that silly job thing. It's been long enough, don't you think?" Her tone was light, almost mocking, as if what she did hadn't changed my entire life. I looked up and met her eyes. I didn't raise my voice or show any emotion. I just smiled and said calmly, Actually, I'm doing fine. My company just signed 2 major clients. One's your company lost recently. The room went silent. My mother's smile froze, and Chloe's face lost all color. She set her glass down slowly, her hand trembling a little. My father looked up for the first time, clearly unsure what to say. Chloe opened her mouth but didn't speak. She knew exactly which clients I was talking about. They were some of the company's biggest accounts, the ones that had switched over to us after months of poor results on her end. I could see the realization hit her. She looked down at her plate, trying to hide the embarrassment, but her face said everything. My mother tried to laugh it off. "Oh well, that's business," she said weakly, but her voice didn't sound confident anymore. I just nodded and went back to eating. There was nothing else to add. The rest of the dinner was quiet. The energy in the room had changed completely. My mother stopped bragging, and Chloe barely spoke another word. I didn't feel the need to say anything else. I had come with peace, not pride. I just wanted them to see the truth, that I had survived without them, and I was stronger than before. When I left that night, I didn't look back. The silence that followed me out the door was louder than any apology they could have given. Behind, I was someone they could never control again. A few months after that dinner, things began to change quickly. My company was growing fast, and I was busier than ever. Every week, we gained new clients, and our reputation in the industry kept getting stronger. I was proud of the work my team and I were doing, but I couldn't ignore one thing. Most of the clients we were winning had come from Chloe's firm. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it. Business is business, and companies lose clients all the time. But soon I started hearing things through coworkers and industry contacts. Chloe's firm was struggling. Their major projects were falling apart, and management wasn't happy. People said they were trying to figure out why so many of their long-term clients were leaving, and somehow, Chloe's name kept coming up in those conversations. One afternoon, as I was wrapping up a meeting, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and froze for a second. It was Chloe. I hadn't heard from her in months. For a moment, I thought about ignoring the call, but something inside me told me to answer. Her voice was shaky from the start. "Emily," she said softly. I didn't know who else to call. I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. She took a deep breath and said, "They put me on probation. They're saying it's my fault the clients left." I didn't know it would turn out like this. There was a pause. I could hear her trying not to cry. "Mom just wanted to help me," she said. Her words hit me in a strange way. I could hear the regret in her voice, but also the same excuse she had used since the beginning, that it wasn't really her fault. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to decide what to say. I thought about the night I lost everything, the nights I couldn't sleep, the days I spent doubting myself. No one had helped me then. Not her, not my mother. I finally said, "And who helped me when I needed it?" There was silence on the other end. She didn't say a word. I could almost hear her breathing, trying to find an answer she didn't have. After a long pause, she whispered, "I'm sorry," and then hung up. I sat there for a few minutes, staring at my phone. I didn't feel happy or proud. I just felt empty. I had imagined this moment before, the day my sister would realize what she'd done, but it didn't bring me the satisfaction I thought it would. Maybe because deep down, I still wished none of it had happened. Chloe's company continued to lose more contracts after that. I stopped keeping track. I focused on my own work, my own peace. I didn't reach out to her again, and she didn't call back. For once, I wasn't the one left broken. The roles had changed, but the pain still. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard a knock on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I froze for a second. It was my mother. She stood there holding her purse tightly, wearing the same proud but tired look she always had. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Are you going to let me in, Emily?" I stepped aside, and she walked in, looking around the place like she was inspecting it. "You've done well for yourself," she said. "Nice apartment." Her tone was flat, not warm or proud, more like she was trying to remind me that she noticed. I offered her a seat, but she didn't take it. Instead, she stood in the middle of the room, staring at me with that look I remembered too well, the one she used whenever she wanted to control the situation. "I went to see Chloe," she began. "She's been having a hard time. The company hasn't treated her fairly. She's very upset, and she feels like you've turned your back on the family." I said nothing. I just crossed my arms and listened. She went on, "I don't understand what's happened to you. You've become so cold. Your family." That word, family, hit me harder than I expected. I took a slow breath and looked her straight in the eye. Family, I said quietly. Family doesn't destroy your future and call it love. You taught me to stand alone. Now I'm doing just that. She frowned, clearly not expecting that answer. Don't talk to me like that, she said sharply. Everything I did for your sister. She needed help. You were always the strong one. I thought you'd understand. I shook my head. You didn't help her, Mom. You hurt both of us. You just can't see it. For a few seconds, the room was completely silent. My mother looked smaller than she ever had before. She tried to speak, but the words didn't come out. I could see her pride fighting against her guilt, and for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to cry or defend myself. I just felt calm. She finally sighed and said, "You've changed, Emily." I nodded. Yes, I have. I had to. She stood there for another moment, looking around like she was searching for something to say that would fix everything. But there was nothing left to fix. The damage had been done long ago. I hope one day you'll forgive me, she said quietly, heading toward the door. I already have, I replied. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were. She stopped for a moment, then left without another word. When the door closed, I stood there in silence. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger or sadness. I felt peace, real peace. It wasn't the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from finally letting go. Lingered, only now I was strong enough to stand through it. A full year passed, and my life looked completely different from the one I had before. I had been promoted to senior strategist, one of the youngest in the company's history. When my boss called me into his office to tell me the news, I could barely believe it. The same woman who had once lost everything was now leading projects, managing teams, and making decisions that shaped the company's future. It felt like all the pain I had gone through had built the strength I needed for this moment. The new position came with more responsibility, but also more purpose. I started mentoring young women who reminded me of myself, smart, hardworking, but unsure of their value because someone in their life had made them doubt it. I'd tell them, never let anyone decide your worth. People who truly care will lift you, not hold you down. Every time I said it, I thought about my past, but instead of pain, I felt proud. I had turned something ugly into something meaningful. Sometimes, I'd stay late in the office after everyone else had gone home, looking out at the city lights through the big glass windows. I used to dream of this, not just success, but peace. And I had both now. The ache I once carried in my chest was gone. I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. Meanwhile, things changed for Chloe too. Through mutual contacts, I heard that she had left her job a few months after our last conversation. The pressure, the guilt, and the constant comparisons had finally caught up to her. She decided to go back to school to study something different, something she actually cared about. It wasn't out of pride this time. It was out of reflection. One day, she sent me a short message. It simply said, "I'm trying to be better. I hope you're doing okay." I didn't know how to reply at first. I stared at it for a while, then typed back, "I am. I hope you find what makes you happy." It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, but it was a start. As for my mother, I didn't hear from her much anymore. The calls that used to come with bragging or criticism slowly stopped. People told me she had become quieter, more distant. I think she realized too late what her choices had done. Her pride had turned into something softer, regret. Sometimes I'd think about visiting her, but then I'd remind myself that I didn't know her anything. She had made her decisions, and I had made mine. The difference was mine led me to peace. When I looked at the path I'd taken, all the hurt, the loss, the hard lessons, I realized it had made me who I was. Strong, independent, grounded. I no longer saw myself as the girl who was betrayed. I was the woman who rebuilt her life and found. When I finally bought my first home, it felt like the closing of a long, painful chapter. The house wasn't huge or fancy, but it was mine. Every brick, every corner, every bit of it represented the battles I had fought alone. I stood in the empty living room the first night, the city lights glowing softly through the windows, and for the first time in years, I felt completely free. It wasn't about money or titles anymore. It wasn't even about proving my mother or sister wrong. It was about knowing that I had rebuilt myself after everything they took from me. The job, the respect, the trust, I had lost it all once. But standing there, in a place I could finally call home, I realized I had gained something far more powerful: peace. I thought about the girl I was back then, scared, broken, sitting in her car outside that office, wondering why her own family had betrayed her. I wished I could tell her that it was all going to make sense one day. That every sleepless night, every tear, every painful silence would lead her here, stronger, wiser, and unshakable. Chloe and I spoke once in a while after she went back to school. Our conversations were polite, short, but calm. I didn't hold anger anymore, and I think she sensed that. She told me she was focusing on herself, trying to build a life that felt right this time. I wished her well and truly meant it. As for my mother, she never apologized directly, but I knew she carried the weight of what she had done. The distance between us remained, and I decided to keep it that way. One evening, as I unpacked boxes in my new kitchen, I found an old photo of my family. It was taken years ago, long before things went wrong. We were smiling, unaware of the storm that would come later. For a moment, I felt a small sting in my chest, but it faded quickly. I placed the photo in a drawer, not out of bitterness, but because it belonged to a part of my life I had already healed from. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and let my thoughts settle. Everything I had gone through, the betrayal, the loss, the loneliness, had shaped me into someone I was proud to be. I whispered to myself, sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right. That line stayed with me, echoing softly in the quiet of my new home. I didn't need to win anyone's approval or forgiveness. My success, my peace, my independence, that was enough. The betrayal had once broken me, but rebuilding myself had been the greatest revenge of all. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry or hurt. I just felt grateful that I had finally found my way home. Not just in a place, but within myself. Her own way, no matter who tried to stand in her way.